Hello, thank you for joining us here today at Lana. Today we are joined by the one and only Piers Morgan. Piers, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
We are obviously here having this conversation in Dubai, so I think that's a great place to start the conversation today. How do you see the evolution of Dubai, not just as a hub for business, but also as a media hub, as someone who's conquered both British and American media yourself?
Well, I think what's been striking to me, I came here in 2008 and made a documentary for ITV in the UK about Dubai, and to see the transformation, I've not been back since, in 16 years has been utterly staggering. And obviously there's a plethora of media here now which just didn't exist 16 years ago. So I think in television, online, in radio, in podcasts, everything seems very dynamic here now in a way that I didn't see when I first came here. So I think that's a great opportunity for people in Dubai. I think you're getting more and more foreign journalists coming here, yourself and others, and I think that's only going to make things better here. So I think the prospect for Dubai media is very good.
So look, as somebody who's visited the region before and Dubai, what do you think would be one story that the Western world consistently gets wrong in its reporting about the Arab world?
Well, there's a kind of sense of, well, they're all medieval barbarians, aren't they, over there in the Middle East? And that's from people who've never been to the Middle East. And it's a myth that's been perpetuated now for a long time, and I get quite annoyed with some of my English media friends, particularly the ones who take all the jollies to the sporting events in the Middle East, but before they take off, they write their normal piece about how awful it all is over there. I was like, well, if it's that awful, why are you going? So I think there's a lot of hypocrisy, a lot of ignorance from people who simply haven't been to the Middle East, and it bears no relation, of course, to what actually is happening here. And I've been in the last 3 months to Saudi Arabia, to Qatar, and now to Dubai. The energy, the dynamism, the creativity, the ambition, the scale of everything, the speed stuff gets done. It is intoxicating to be around, and it's a great lesson to countries like mine, frankly, where everything takes forever to do. We've been talking about a third runway at Heathrow for about 3,000 years. We haven't even started making it yet, and that's atypical, really, of what goes on in the UK. And America's a bit like that. I remember Donald Trump telling me, the reason the Chinese had stolen a march on America was it would take 18 months for the Chinese to build a bridge to the same specification it takes the Americans 20 years to build. So this has been a big problem. Not a problem if you're in the Middle East, because you're showing everyone else how to do it.
So look, that's a pretty glowing review then of the region. Would you consider moving here?
I wouldn't want to live here. I mean, I've got a home in Los Angeles. I do a lot of work in America, so that's probably going to stay the overseas property I have. But I certainly have been here a lot more than in the last 3 months alone than I ever imagined I would do. And I love it. I love the fact that everyone here has got a go-to mentality. The work ethic is strong, and you're just creating a lot of excitement. Whether I was watching what's happened in Riyadh in 7 or 8 years is incredible. Qatar, since the World Cup, has just exploded, I think. Dubai is just unrecognizable from the place that and even when I came, it was transforming fast. So I just think it's a very sort of thrilling place to be. It's not perfect. No country is. My country isn't perfect. I don't think the UK is in any position to lecture anybody, frankly, about how they should lead their lives. So I think that, it's a very, pulsating time to be here, which is good for the region.
So, given the number of people that you have interviewed and the long-running shows that you've held, you've clearly met the A-list of every world leader in the world. So a couple of questions about that experience for you. One, who has been, in your mind, the most impressive world leader that you've met?
Nelson Mandela.
And two, the opposite. Who was
the least impressive? Well, there's a long list of those. Liz Truss, probably. British Prime Minister for less time than a lettuce takes to rot. It was actually a test done by the Daily Star newspaper as to whether a lettuce would last longer than Liz Truss, and the lettuce outsurvived Liz Truss's 10 years. So, I thought she was completely hopeless, and pretty hopeless when you meet her. I think that Mandela just had something extraordinary about him. I watched him in 2003 make a speech about Iraq in London, where he eviscerated Bush and Blair about Iraq. And he'd heard I was the anti-war editor at the Daily Mirror, so I got about 10, 15 minutes with him on my own. Just put it in a little tent by the Red Cross who were putting on the event, and I had 10, 15 minutes with this guy, and he was just everything you hoped he'd be.
You mentioned war there as well. I think it would be remiss if we didn't mention the ongoing conflict in the Middle East, something which I think recently you commented that Netanyahu's ongoing actions are shameful. How has your viewpoint evolved on that conflict?
Well, I think like a lot of people who are not directly involved in it, you looked at what happened on October the 7th, 2023, and you just saw one of the worst terror attacks of modern times perpetrated on the Israeli people, and it was utterly horrific. 250 odd people kidnapped, 1,200 murdered, nearly 7,000 more injured in wave after wave of attack by 3,000 terrorists. I mean, it was unconscionable what Hamas did that day. And I took a position that obviously Israel had to respond in force and in big force, as any country in the world would have pressurized their government to do in the same situation. But my question was always, what is a proportionate response? And it just seems to me that once we got to the ceasefire, okay, it's time to end it. And then the ceasefire ends and suddenly got a blockade of deliberate starvation of a population of 2 million people where 50% are under 18. You're starving the kids. And then these relentless bombardments, which they say are to get Hamas. But actually, is it getting Hamas or is it just killing endless civilians? The story of the doctor, the two doctors, husband and wife, who lost 9 of their 10 children, is just utterly devastating. And for what? What is Israel actually achieving? It's not dismantling Hamas, because if it had done, the hostages would have been released. I just don't see any strategy here other than just endless bombardment. And that's not a strategy. That is, as 2 Israeli prime ministers have come out and said, ex-prime ministers, is a war crime.
It must be difficult, given that you cover such a variety of topics, to come to a viewpoint on a conflict as marred in history and difficulty as that one. How do you go about evolving a topic as difficult as that?
Well, especially when you're interviewing people who are much more knowledgeable than you are about it. I did go away the moment the war started and thought this is going to be not just about October the 7th, it's going to be about the history of this 75-year conflict, so I better be up to speed. I had covered it a lot before at CNN in particular, so I wasn't oblivious to the history, but I really wanted to get on top of the detail. So when you get people on both sides who want to go at each other, you've got to be in a position as the kind of ringmaster for this to hold them to account.
Your show, which I've been watching on YouTube, crossed over 1 billion views, which is a staggeringly large number, and it also did it unbelievably fast. So another two-parter for you. What do you think it was that led to such fast growth, and what kind of advice would you give to other aspiring content creators looking for that sort of trajectory?
Yeah, I think you've got to find your niche out there, right? There's a lot of people trying to do stuff online, especially on YouTube. It's like, what's going to make you different? In my case, I saw an opportunity where lots of high-profile journalists were from the left and from the right, and were doing partisan channels, whether it's Mehdi Hassan on the left or Tucker Carlson on the right. There seemed to me a gap in the market for somebody down the middle who was just going to not make positions clear about what side I'm on or what politics I have, but holding everybody to account and getting them all on together to debate. And that seemed to really resonate with people. Plus I was landing a lot of very big high-profile interviews, whether it was President Trump or Kanye West, or I went to Ukraine, interviewed President Zelensky. We've had a lot of big names. Cristiano Ronaldo obviously was a huge one. Bassem Youssef blew up the internet. So I think we had a lot of big interviews that sort of caught fire online. And that obviously generates a lot of heat for your numbers and helped make us very successful. But we've got to, nearly 4 million subscribers in 3 years or so. It's been a very rapid rate of growth.
Do you watch a lot of other content creators on YouTube?
Yeah. I watch. The thing about it is, unlike in newspapers, like in the British tabloid war back when I was running a tabloid, you all wanted to kill each other. Now, in the ecosystem of YouTubers, you all help each other. It's very collaborative. So I'll go on Megyn Kelly's show or Tucker Carlson's or Mehdi Hassan's. They all come on mine. And you'll help each other. You're not really in competition. All the boats get risen in the ocean. So I think it's a more collegiate kind of thing. We're all trying to get bigger, but the way to get bigger is to have each other on and get everybody talking about the interviews. So I think that's been a really interesting eye-opener for me about the way this ecosystem works.
So last point for you here. You used that phrase "gap in the market" earlier in reference to yourself. So I'm going to shamelessly talk about our brand, Lana, which is just launching. What kind of advice would you give for a brand such as ours launching that's looking to fill in a gap in the Arabic media market and in our own growth journey?
Yeah, look, I think there's a lot of opportunity out here because I think you've got a lot of British journalists have come out who are obviously very skilled, very experienced. I think that's a very good advantage, I think, that the Brits have when they come somewhere like the Middle East, which is still quite a fledgling area for modern media, really. But I think that my advice is, in the end, the thing I learned in my media career is people will forgive you anything as long as you get the facts right. You can have an opinion about everything, but if you get your facts wrong, then you'll soon lose credibility. So I would always say put a premium on facts, on truth, on authenticity. Have something that's your thing and be authentic about it. What is different about you to everybody else? I don't know, but you're going to know better than me. Play to that. Play to something that's a little bit different that gives you an obvious place in the marketplace where we go, oh yeah, that's those guys. I think that's really important.
Would you worry that truth is harder to find?
Well, it is harder to find because so many people are deliberately out there faking the news, using AI to do it. I see AI fakes about me where I think it's something I've said, and it's not. It's just AI is recreated, taking words from other interviews I've done and splicing them to say I like guns in America or something. It's dangerous and it's concerning.
Does it worry you people using your likeness?
Yeah, I think every public figure's had it. And then they use you to do scams against unsuspecting people on Facebook and all that. It's incredibly irritating and quite scary how good it's getting, and it will only get worse. So the trick is to be on your guard, vigilant, and to make sure that we, in the real world of journalism, go after the fakes and take them down together.
All right, Piers, thank you very much for joining us here today.